paint some pine trees in acrylic, I like to start with a pencil and just draw a vertical line. Needs to be vertical-ish. Don't feel like it needs to be perfect. And then usually what I like to do is draw just a few little lines coming out. Now, of course, they can go in different directions. Some go up, some go out, some go down, some are fuller, some are more sparse, some are thinner. You know, there's all sorts of shapes. So feel free to look at pictures or just make one up. But I usually like to leave little spaces or gaps and just sort of let my pencil kind of dance across the page and just make some wavy lines. And then you can certainly leave a bit of the trunk at the bottom too. You can even give that a little bit of dimension. And then I just keep this really, really loose. And then from here, I can start painting. For brushes, I typically like round brushes or flat paint brushes. You can certainly try both. You can try different types of brushes. And then I just have some yellow, blue, and red. I'm gonna mix up a green. And I like to start with a little bit of the lighter green, and then I'll add a little bit of darker green for some shadow. I'm gonna put just a little touch of water in my paint. You can skip this step if you want to, but sometimes that first layer, I like to thin it down just a bit. And then I like to hold my brush a little bit further back, just so I can get some of these natural little movements in my hand. It's not perfect. The trees are very organic, so I want these movements to feel natural. And this one I'm just basing off my imagination, but again, you can definitely look at pictures for ideas of colors or direction of the branches. But I'll come back up, but I do just like some little soft taps on the edges. I think they, typically just have kind of softer edges. And how much detail you include is up to you. Typically, if a tree is closer to you in a landscape, you might see more detail versus one that's further away. You tend to see less detail. I just do little taps and just kind of pull that out as I go. Again, leaving space. I've heard it before, leaving space for the birds, or you can see a little background poke through if this was over top of a sky or something like that too. And remember, it does not need to be perfect on both sides. I do like a general balance, but pine trees and all types of trees are organic and natural, and they're going to have little variations. All right, so I want to let that dry. While that's drying, I'm rinsing off my brush a little bit, and I'm going to mix up a brown. And how I can get a brown is I like to actually do a green first and then add some red into it. So it's the three primary colors, but I like to start with the green and then slowly add the red. Green and red are complementary, so that 50-50 ratio is typically going to give you a nice brown, but you could always put a little dot of yellow in it, or you can darken that brown with a little bit of extra blue. Mix that up, and again, I can put a little touch of water in there if I want to, or skip that option, and then adding just a bit of the brown for the trunk. Now, the other thing you can do with the trunk color, if you want to, is we might see little pops of it throughout the tree here. So if you want, this is optional, you don't have to do this, but you can bring in just little bits of the trunk. Now, if you want to ground it a little bit too, you can certainly expand that or add to the trunk as you want to. Then after this dries up a little bit, I'm going to darken my green. I'm going to mix a little bit more over here. Get a little bit of a darker variation. Put a tiny touch of red in there. Red will just darken the green a little. I don't want too much in there, but just getting darker variation. Now this time I'm not going to add any water to it. I want it to build up a little bit. And then I just want to think about, if sun was shining down on this tree, from this direction, maybe I'd have a little shadow on one side. And you don't have to get too specific with it. It depends, again, how realistic you want to go, or if you're looking at a picture, you'll be able to note where the sun is and where the shadows are. Usually just adding a little bit, and you can still put some on both sides because, there's areas of the tree that are coming forward and going back, could be very dense. So you can definitely build up layers over top of existing paint, and I let the edges just kind of go out a little bit. I don't put this everywhere. I definitely want that original color to poke through. Remember, you can try different brushes. I'm using the round brush. I like how that works, but sometimes I prefer the flat, or some people prefer fan brushes. So feel free to try different varieties. See what works for you. There's not one way to do a tree, but this idea that we can build it in layers and build up a little bit of depth that way. I could certainly go back and add another type of green, a lighter green on here too, or another option. Sometimes it's nice to take a smaller brush, adding just a little bit of water on the smaller brush, and then just paying attention to some of the ends a little bit more. Again, it depends how detailed you want to get with it, but a smaller brush allows me to just selectively pull out a few areas. Doesn't need to be everywhere, but just a few little spots on the end. Remember, you can do this on top of a background. You can layer trees. Maybe it's a winter scene and you let this dry and tap little bits of white to create snow on the ends. And if you wanted to, you could even do another variation of a green. If I add a little bit more blue in there, I can even darken that a bit more. And so sometimes it's nice to just push a little contrast. And there you go, a very simple pine tree in acrylic.